Movement can breathe new life into any pad. In this Synthwave Recipes video, I'm going to show you a few simple ways to turn a pad from this to this or this. Let's do it. The way to make a pad feel alive is by using movement and change. For this, LFOs, envelopes, and automation are our best friends. You can apply the techniques I'll show you in any subtractive synthesizer of your choice, but today I'll be using the free GR8 by FutureTone. Modern synths like Anna, Serum, and Massive, along with many others, offer way more options in terms of LFOs, envelopes, and modulation capabilities, but GR8 will be enough for us. Here's the pad sound we're going to start with. It sounds good, but it's a little static. It lacks movement and life. First thing we'll do is use the envelope to change the filter's cutoff. Okay, so let's make sure that in GR8, envelope 1 is assigned to the filter. Let's give the envelope some amount. Let's set the attack to 0, sustain to 0, and release halfway or just a little bit under halfway. And this is what I call a filter stab, because it's a very short, bright sound. We can play with the decay and make it even shorter. Because we have a delay on this patch, that's why we hear it making this ping pong from side to side, which creates additional movement. Okay, then we can also take the sound and turn it from a stab into a filter splash by opening up the decay or increasing the decay just a little bit, like this. We can make it as long as we want. Right there, it sounds very good. If we increase the attack, we can turn this from a stab to a little bit of a swell. So let's start with a short swell. Right there, it has the attack of a brass sound, just a little less aggressive than before. Just increase the attack a little bit more. Okay, right there, it's like the attack very similar to a brass patch. Soft. Okay, so right there is a nice swell. Can make it even slower. Just play with how soft you want the attack to be and whether the decay should be long or short, kind of cut off abruptly like this, or long. A couple of things to keep in mind are that if you increase the sustain of the envelope controlling the filter, it's like you're turning up the brightness. Also, if you adjust the envelope amount, you can make the patch brighter. Darker. It all depends on what you're going for. Now let's look at how we can use the LFO to modulate the filter cutoff and introduce movement. Okay, so right here in GR8, we have the LFO section here at the bottom left-hand corner. And here in the filter section, we're gonna activate the LFO or give it an LFO amount just by turning this knob up. Okay, let's activate the LFO sync so it's synced to the tempo. Now we're gonna set this to a rate of, I think in this case, two bars sounds good. You can experiment with the different waveforms because definitely they will sound different. This sawtooth waveform has a more aggressive attack, and the pulse or square wave will have even more of an aggressive attack. Okay, so if we can change the rate to something faster, we can introduce movement. For example, the 3/4 rates, 3/8, and 3/16. You can get some very interesting triplet sounds with that. Let's bring the LFO amount down just a little bit. The sawtooth is a little bit softer. We'll now use the LFO and envelope to introduce movement to the pitch. Okay, so let's start with the LFO. Here under the pitch section, we'll engage the LFO. Obviously that's a lot of detuning. Let's just make sure that the rate is not synced, so this is deactivated. Let's just find a rate or a speed that we like. Thing right there, then bring the LFO amount down, obviously. We'll just give it a tiny bit. It's very subtle, but it does make a difference. The other thing we can do is let's deactivate the LFO to pitch. Use envelope 1. So for this, we're not using envelope 1 for the pitch. You see that the amount is at 0. Okay. So let's make sure that the destination, in this case, is set to envelope 1. Let's turn it up completely. What this does, it's gonna create a dropping pitch. Play with both the attack and the decay of the envelope just to get the kind of sound that we're looking for. So the longer the decay, obviously the longer it's going to take for that pitch to drop down. So it can be very short or long. And also, if we tweak the attack, it can have a bit of a swell, then a long drop. In this case, we're just modulating the pitch of one of the oscillators. So if you feel like this pitch dropping sound is too much for the patch, then you can just adjust the mix of the oscillators to introduce just a little bit of that pitch drop. Adjust it to taste, or to distaste, or to bad taste. Now we'll use the LFO to modulate the level of the amp or the volume. Okay, so for this, let's activate the LFO amount to the amp. Completely up. Let's make sure that the LFO rate is synced to tempo. And let's start with something like a bar. Or that's too slow, let's go with quarter note. Okay, now we're introducing some nice movement into our static pad. Experiment with different LFO waveforms, because some will be more aggressive or smoother. I'm gonna give the sound a little bit of filter envelope movement. Okay, let's increase the rate. Like I said before, 316, 3.8, and even 3.4 I think are rates that work really well, especially if you have some delay on your patch, like we have in this case. There's a very nice interplay and a ping-pong effect on both sides of the speakers or your headphones. This is starting to sound like a transgate, which is a technique that we will cover shortly. A tried and true technique similar to modifying the amp via the LFO is simply using some kind of sidechain plugin or sidechaining the kick to the sidechaining the pad to the kick. So in this case, I'm just using Kickstart 2 plugin. I'm going to activate it. Right there, it sounds pretty good. I can change how much of this effect is going to the pad. I can reduce it until it's barely audible, or at least not as extreme as 100% mix. And I can play with different waveforms to get to the sound that I want. The last technique I'm going to show you today is using a transgate plugin, or a plugin that enables to draw some kind of automation curves or automation shapes or patterns to affect the amplitude or the volume. So I'm just using my default Studio One Xtreme plugin, and I have already chosen a patch or a preset called ARPGate 3. Let's listen to how it sounds. Instantly, it introduces a lot of movement and rhythm. Definitely I could choose another preset. Or create my own if I wanted to. And of course, let's not forget that we can mix and match all of these techniques to get to something truly unique that feels alive. So let's just mix some of these techniques. Right now we're using the envelope to control the filter cutoff. We can also assign movement via the LFO. Let's also give some movement to the amp. What about the pitch? Nice. Okay, finally, let's not forget that we can activate the sidechain. Nice. Of course, you can make this as complex as you want or as simple as you want. It depends on the kind of sound which you're going for and what your track needs. Now that you've seen how easy it is to transform a static pad into a living being, I hope you're inspired to try out these techniques on your own. Watch this next video where I show you how to create the strings pad sound we used for this tutorial.